Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. All of what's coming down to traditional markets, you can get the clues if you pay attention to venture capital, private credit, and equity. Joining me is Shana Sissel, founder and CEO of Banrion Capital Management. She's here to discuss what you can glean from these markets to get insight into the public markets. Shana, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thanks so much.
What sectors can you find direct exposure to when you are looking at the alternative space?
I mean, sector-wise, you can get anything, but if you want to talk about physical and real assets like energy, real estate, things of that nature, infrastructure is a big play right now. All of those things fall into the alternative investment world, and those are all hard assets, real assets that you can gain exposure to through different alternative products.
Right, and having spent time in private equity, you got some great insight into industries like AI and the EV space.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the great parts about being in the alternative investment space is if you're involved in private equity or private credit or even venture capital, you kind of understand what the ongoing trends are. One of my favorite things to do is to look at what kind of patent activity there is to see what the latest trends will be. So 5 years ago, there was a huge rise in the number of patents that were issued related to AI. So that's something you kind of see the trend coming. NVIDIA was a stock that I heard about at a PE conference in 2018. People were really talking about how important NVIDIA was for the AI revolution and the EV revolution. They're a huge component, their chips. And at the time, people really only associated them with, say, gaming and graphic design, not design, but graphics on your computer. But it was at that time where you kind of hear about those things, and being in the PE and venture capital world, you can gain exposure to the newest and latest trends long before the market starts to pay attention.
And you also, before the financial crisis, the great financial crisis in 08 and 09, that's when you first started working in alternatives. Did you see anything from the alternative space that gave you a hint that, there's definitely trouble down the line here?
It's funny. I started my career in June of 2007. In the alternative space. July 2007 was my first day on the job. I had just gotten hired in June, and it was my first day on the job. I moved to Seattle, and within a week, the first thing we were hearing about is that we could not liquidate a position we had in an asset-based lender because they had no liquidity. And then in August, we saw a lot of the managers that we invested in having issues with margin calls that forced them to sell some of their more liquid opportunities, which was value stocks. If you remember, there was like this mid-August sell-off of value, large cap value, and everybody wondered why. So I say that paying attention to the alternative space is the canaries in the coal mine. Whether or not you invest, paying attention to the space is really important because they are the plumbing, in a lot of ways, the plumbing of the markets. They provide liquidity when no one else can in a lot of ways. So even with private credit, alternative credit is important, because it's non-traditional, it's not banks, it's those non-bank lenders that are the lenders of last resort when other people can't get credit from traditional banking, especially like small cap stocks and things of that nature. So these are things you should pay attention to. Whether or not you invest, that's a different story, but you should pay attention to it because you can learn a lot about what's going to happen in the markets going forward.
Which is so interesting because that's the environment we're in right now is lending standards. They're starting to get more tight. One of the investments that we've heard a lot about this year is private credit because those are the ones that are extending access to private capital markets, if you will, to these smaller companies, to small and medium-sized businesses. So you detected a trend in the financial crisis, you detected a trend with NVIDIA. What's out there now that for the next 5 to 10 years we should be thinking about?
I think you should start thinking about some of the real asset trends, the energy trends, the pipeline trends, solar energy trends, a lot of opportunity zone in the solar space, a lot of opportunity in the infrastructure space. The U.S. government, and through some of the legislation that's recently been passed, is going to be doing some spending in infrastructure. You can get direct access to some of the infrastructure plays through alternative investing strategies.
Is there an area that is less fortunate, or no, you're seeing negative indicators?
Not necessarily negative indicators, but some of the things that people think about traditionally, like private equity, I think there's going to be some hard times there, venture capital, because the IPO market's not great. and you have what happened with SVB,
Right.
which makes it hard in that startup space. So that's a space that maybe isn't, the best place to be right now. But there is definitely opportunity. I think long term, you see the energy plays, the pipeline plays, some of that solar and alternative energy stuff, that kind of thing, and the infrastructure plays are all available through alternative investments right now directly.
Well, which makes sense because to your point earlier, you look for places where you're seeing patents, right? And that alternative energy technology area, green tech and so forth, it's still early days. So I would imagine you're seeing a lot of filings there.
I haven't looked at the patent filing recently, but yeah, I would assume that that's a place that there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of filings that are coming through right now.
All right, Shana, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.